Thank you for listening today on Revealing Wholeness, sponsored by Infinity Whole Health. Check out our website at infinityWholeHealth.com, where we are revealing the eternal in each individual, the infinite in the individual. The creativity is made manifest. Limitation is let go. Now, here's your host, Dr. Troy Munson.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Troy Munson from Infinity Whole Health here in Orting, Washington. And tonight we get to talk about, are you worried about your ticker? Is your heart a concern for you? And so I'm going to try to lay out some things tonight in a simple manner that we can grasp and take away and maybe have some information that actually is going to help us with our heart, with maybe heart conditions, with high blood pressure, cholesterol. We're going to kind of cover some broad ranges here. You'll also find that if the information isn't quite as complete as you like, that's kind of by design, because to speak about the heart is a massive topic. And to do so in 30 to 45 minutes, we're going to leave some things out. So if you're out there and you have a lot of knowledge, just know that I know that. You're welcome to text things into the box and ask questions. I'll get to them towards the end. But for most of us, I'm just going to try to give some general things that are good to do for the heart and conditions that may be of concern, symptoms that might be concern. What could I do dietarily? Is exercise the end-all, be-all that it should be? We're going to kind of dispel some myths. I'm going to give you really hardened evidence, too, about why I believe what I believe and why I want to be gentle with some things and other things I think we can certainly push. So with that in mind, we're going to talk about the heart nutritionally, mechanically, and emotionally. How does it get affected by those things in our life, and what can we do to help? So before we begin, though, I do want to mention that I'm going to basically make some recommendations and things and why. But before, I like to tell you a little bit about myself, because some of you out there may have not known me and never heard me speak before. Done lots of speaking for many years, and just to tell you a little bit about my background of why am I doing this and why am I doing nutrition and chiropractic and all that? Well, when I was 9 years old, I had a concussion. And after that concussion, it was right at the end of third grade into fourth grade. And I moved up to Washington with my parents in fourth grade. And my parents started noticing that they couldn't get my attention. And when I finally went into fourth grade up here, this teacher asked me to read. Would you read me this line, please? And when I went to go read, she was all exasperated because I couldn't read. And I literally looked at the page and thought, nothing makes any sense whatsoever. And when that happened, I was so confused, and she was so angry. And my parents realized that now I'm in these remedial reading classes, and they're like, what's going on? And so my grandma said, hey, let's take him to Dr. Caruso up in Seattle. I think something's not right. And when I went up to see him, he was in his 90s, still practicing nutrition, even some energy healing and chiropractic. And I remember that when he started working on me, I just noticed these amazing differences. And after a few visits, I remember pointing back to him and I told my mom, I said, whatever that guy just did to me, I'm going to do. And so as I spoke out those powerful words, they now are about where I've come from. And my past is such that I've gone through a lot of really difficult, hard things in my life that have made me question why. Why would I have to suffer this way? And in doing so, I have this voracious appetite to learn and understand each aspect of the healing of the body. And why does it do what it does? Now, am I exhaustive and I know everything? No, not even close. But I'm always researching, as my clients will know, and I'm always looking at things from a different light. And so we're going to look at the heart from a more nutritional and holistic background rather than from a mechanistic, your heart is bad, we're going to give you this drug, or your blood pressure's high, we're going to do this drug. We're going to actually look into those conditions under the surface, so to speak, and say, why? Why did these things happen? So, first things first, does the heart heal? Yes, it does. And it's one of the fastest healing organs in our body. Think about this. What organ cannot take a break and say, you know what, I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to stop for a while. I'm going to heal. You guessed it, the heart. If it stops, nothing happens. And so it can't stop. It has to heal on the fly, and it has to be relatively quick and easy too. So we're talking about some drugs like anti-inflammatories, how it caused so many heart attacks. In fact, let's just cover it now. Heart attacks, when they happen, it's a blood vessel gets blocked, and now we don't supply any blood to that area of the heart, and that area of the heart dies. That's one aspect of a heart attack. Well, our heart, every time it beats, okay, it's creating inflammation, microinflammation of those muscles contracting all the time. So this microinflammation heals really fast too. And so we want a heart that speeds up and slows down all the time. Like I'm breathing, I'll take a breath, that puts a little pressure on the heart, it'll speed up a few beats a minute, and then it'll slow back down as I breathe out and I become restful, and then I'm going to breathe in again, and it's going to do it again. It's going through these rhythms. In fact, we found this out because of the unfortunate person that had a pacemaker put in their heart. They died in a month because they just kept the pacemaker at 72 beats a minute, and it didn't waver. And 72 beats a minute creates a certain frequency in the heart, and it hit that heart every time, or that wall of the heart every time, because of that 72 beats a minute, and it blew out that part of the heart, and it caused a heart attack. And so they realized, okay, we need a variable heart rate. We need it to go up and down naturally like it does in all of us. And so heart rate variability is important. Well, that microinflammation of that going up and down and creating those things, we know that if we have an anti-inflammatory that's really good at doing its job, yeah, it's for pain, like if I have arthritis pain, but it also stops the repair inside the heart tissue, and the heart scars up more and more until finally it just stopped. And so that form of a heart attack was what a lot of the heavy-duty anti-inflammatories that they used back in the 90s caused. In fact, I think one report said almost 60,000 people died of a heart attack from taking anti-inflammatories in 1 year. And I think it was Vioxx, if I'm not mistaken. And so they pulled it off the market and said, okay, that's bad. That's why I tell a lot of my clients that you really don't want to be on any form of anti-inflammatory if you can at all help it, because it's doing damage in ways you can't even imagine. And since we're on the aspect of drugs, I'm going to finish up drugs right now because a lot of you are on acid reflux drugs. And acid reflux drugs, what they do is they are usually what we call calcium channel blockers. In our stomach, and I have podcasts on this, in our stomach we have these little proton pumps that point out into the stomach and shoot a hydrogen atom into the stomach. That's a proton. And that hydrogen atom combines with the chloride that's already in the stomach and becomes hydrochloric acid, and that's what helps us digest food. And they said, hey, we could help by maybe not having these proton pumps point and shooting these hydrogens into the stomach. And so they created proton pump inhibitors or calcium channel blockers. Well, every muscle uses calcium to actually ratchet up and create this ball of muscle. So these fibers of our muscle, they ratchet together and they get this nice big ball. Well, what does that is calcium ratchets them up or kind of pulls like a coffin hoist and ratchets these muscles up as the contraction happens. And then calcium releases the contraction. And so we need those things to happen, and we need calcium to do that. And so when we have a calcium channel blocker in there, we have issues with the heart typically. And so what are some symptoms that we might notice from a heart not doing so well? So some symptoms from a heart not performing well would be swelling, obviously, in ankles, any part of the body. We also might notice a lot of fatigue. Elderly people might actually notice that they get some flabby flesh. That's a protein deficiency as well as a digestive issue, but it's also now happening in the muscle of the heart too. Obviously, blood pressure issues, too high, too low, but blood pressure that may also have a very wide gap between the two numbers or a very narrow gap between the two numbers. Your pulse being too high above 80 or getting close to 80. It too low being below 60 or close to 60. Those would be other aspects, and we're going to explore that a little bit more in just a moment. Other things that we might notice. Besides that, maybe I get fatigued walking upstairs. I'm like, well, that's weird. Maybe I'm just out of shape. Well, maybe you're not. So weakness in muscles, sedentary lifestyle, obviously. Anything that would deplete vitamin E and vitamin C in the body, like smoking. Poor diet, eating fast food, that's kind of destroyed a lot of those vitamin capabilities in the body. Just not having any energy anymore. Those are all signs that a heart and system are not doing so well. We could see the obvious signs like varicose veins, veins that are too close. Even diabetes, we're now going to start tearing down blood vessel wall and heart tissue. We also know that when the muscles of our body can no longer burn sugar very well, we now step into diabetes much more quickly. And so if we're in a diabetic state, we likely have muscles that do not burn sugar very well. And so then we've got more challenges. So those are all kind of some indicators that the heart might not be doing so well. Now, how would we be able to look and see, if somebody came in and say, hey, I want to know if my heart's doing well? Well, we might do some things like a heart scan. So a heart scan in my office, we actually look at all 4 valves individually and we listen to them. And that listening now shows me what that graph should be like. But a heart sound, we hear this lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And what you're hearing are the valves coming together and closing. And that hit is that sound. And we see that frequency of a vibration. And so the 2 bigger valves come together for the lub, lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And the dub is the smaller valves making a very, very tiny little blip on the screen, so to speak. Now, between those beats, there should be a lot of nice, smooth space. And so that space tells us, if it's not smooth, that there's some regurgitation or a murmur. And so if some of you have been told, hey, you have a heart murmur, or you have AFib, it's kind of squiggly all the time. It's not real cohesive. The ventricles are not pumping like they should, and the muscle's very uncoordinated, and the nerve that's hitting the muscle telling it what to do does not do that well. And so we could literally see that on a heart graph. And here's the coolest thing about a heart graph, is it tells me what other organs, by what's happening in each valve, are also affected. And what do we need to do to strengthen those systems to now have an effect on the heart even greater, so that it has an easier time doing its job and it's now healthier and healthier. So we'll see a lot of times vitamin C issues and vitamin E issues show up on that heart graph. And so if I did, let's say, blood work on you as well, blood work would also show if there's inflammation, again, the need for vitamin C and vitamin E. And we would see many different heart markers that we could look at for inflammation. But there's one heart marker that many physicians, even cardiologists, won't do, and that's called a BNP. And that BNP marker is a natritic peptide. And so that natritic peptide, if we find it in the blood, it actually tells us that the heart is really tearing down its tissue, and quite quickly. And so the higher that BNP number goes, the more likely you are to have a heart attack. So some of you that have experienced a heart attack, that is a number that you would want to have checked often. And clients in my office, they will call up and say, hey, I want to run a BNP. No, my staff will say, great, we'll have that ready for you, pick up the requisite, go get your blood work. But it's peace of mind that, hey, they're doing pretty well in their heart and they're not running close to a heart attack situation. Now, the medical profession doesn't do a BNP often because they don't have any drug that lowers it. And ultimately what that's telling us is that your heart is not repairing, and we need to do things like high vitamin C, high vitamin E. Now, those of you that might think that you have a bad heart and you go run out and buy synthetic vitamin C and vitamin E in the form of ascorbic acid and mixed tocopherols, you're not buying vitamin C and vitamin E. You're buying a synthetic preservative is what you're buying. So everybody thinks vitamin C on the planet, if they even know, is ascorbic acid. And that's the covering or the preservative portion around the whole complex of the vitamin C complex in nature. Vitamin C is 500 things, at least that we know of to this time, that actually make vitamin C what it is. Vitamin E is not mixed tocopherols. That's the preservative portion of the vitamin E complex. If you don't believe me, they're a great preservative, and if you go to fish oil, you'll see on the label that it says mixed tocopherols, but nowhere in there will you find that it says vitamin E typically. They're not going to tell you that that's vitamin E, because if somebody asks, they're going to say, hey, that's the preservative of the cod liver oil. Because, mixed tocopherols are excellent at preserving the oil portion of the vitamin E complex, and that's why they're there. But vitamin E literally has 1,000 things that we now know of that make it vitamin E when we find it in nature, like wheat germ oil. Okay? So we want to always go after natural sources, truly